We've got this vintage vignette here from my Cottage series. We've got this cute little space. It's got a lot of interesting things. We can learn some different techniques. Grab your supplies and we'll get started. So we've got a line drawing here, and whether you have my take and paint from Tamery.com or if you've just drawn your own picture and want to know how to do some of these techniques, we can just follow along here. I've mixed up quite a few greens because that's our main theme here. We're going to start off with this little pot here. You can make it green or kind of like a turquoisey color that I think would go really well with this setup. I'm going to go along these little ridges here in this kind of planter slash bucket, using my brush with a narrow brush, water brush here with the fine tip, just to kind of get in between those little ridges so that we can maintain that aspect of depth here. Now that is very intense and dark compared to what I just showed you as my example. So if you have something like that, you can literally go in and kind of pull away with your clear brush a little bit of that pigment. You can even transfer it, like for instance, this bottle kind of matches that same color. You can just pull that over to another area if it's usable and you've got that colorway. And it leaves a nice little texture too, so it's not all bad. Okay, so we've got that basic, and we'll go in and kind of put a shadow in there in a minute, and I'm going to let that set up and dry just a second. So we already started on this bottle here. We're putting the dark side kind of here where the light is sort of coming in strongly across this way, so the front, it has a little bit of shadow to it. I'm going to transfer a little bit of that back over to here. And this bottle can be any color glass you would like. Like I said, it could also be the green. I just like the idea of having a little bit of green blue in it. And I want to kind of grab these edges here and leave a little bit of a lighter space here in the middle. So you can always take away some of your paint by using a clear brush to loosen it up, or if it's already wet, and you can just dab it with your paper towel. This little area here, we've got storing a little pan and a bowl in our little extra annex area in our cottage. It's kind of the back of the house, and got a few of these goodies. I picked this because I absolutely loved that glass look and the rustic kind of charming cottagey feel. So I'm going to go along the edge of this bottle and really deposit quite a bit of paint. Now I'm going to dabble my brush across here, leave a little bit of the white of the paper, and do a fine line here because that's not a shadow. And now I'll put in another strong line here. And I think because that's going in that direction, I've got kind of, I don't want to leave a strong line, but just making sure that I've got this area a little darker, a little deeper. Oops, wrong paint. And now that's going to be a little darker as it kind of the bottle jug, I guess, or kind of rolls over there. So putting in that line there. Now I can kind of get my brush a little more from the side, get it loaded up with some paint, and I'm coming in with that thin layer of water and kind of starting that first layer. And I don't want that to be quite so it's dark, so we'll kind of blend that out a little bit. And because it's wet, it's dispersing, and that is my plan. If you want your paint to stay in one place, you'd have to wait for that to dry. And we'll come back and add another layer to make it look more realistic, and we'll just kind of leave that alone for now. I've got fainted lines here that are showing you if you want to paint in sort of that rustic look, you've got that as a guide. Otherwise, you can just paint over those fine lines and not worry about it. So I wanted to be able to show you to kind of come in here and put some little pieces where the wood was painted a different color. The natural wood is underneath it, and kind of blending that together. I've got all these different greens that are very, very similar, so I can kind of start with one color, kind of add in another, and it starts to give it texture. It'll dry irregularly, which will look great for peeling paint. Oops. That's kind of very brown there. And because it's still wet, it's kind of blending a little bit. Some of it's just tacky, some of it's actually very wet. And we can go in and kind of define these areas in a little bit. Let's see, I started with this, so let me get in here, and I think I'm going to go all the way to the edge, and I may add a brown on top of that in a little bit. And I'm going to decide on the legs if I want to do them in painted wood or the natural, so I haven't decided yet. Now, I would like more of this paint. I don't exactly remember what I mixed, but it was something to the effect of for me, this green and black. This is more of a blue-green in this kit. And maybe add a little bit of brown and yellow. Make sure it's not too dark. And you don't have to make this many passes at it, but that is a preference. You don't want to overwork your paper too much, especially if you're starting out. It's tempting to just never stop. And taking a look at your paper from a distance every once in a while is good, because we get so close up and fixated we don't even realize it looks awesome, and we're just obsessing over certain little areas and details, especially putting it in a frame. You know, you're going to be seeing it from a distance, and it won't really matter all that much. You will soon forget and just enjoy the art for what it is. And I'm painting each of these little sections sort of one by one. I just went out all the lines there. I'm trying to rush, because ultimately it's all going to end up being green, green and brown. But I want to make sure there's opportunities for this little white of the paper to pop through so that it looks more crackly. Don't really want it to be ultra smooth in the watercolor texture, because I really want it to show its beauty here. Like that. Now the front of this does have green in it. I use these lines to just kind of show its wear. I'm going to get the tip of my brush to kind of make it look a little more pointed and a little darker than the other brown. And we'll see how that dries up, but if I wanted it lighter, I can use the texture of a paper towel there, and this is kind of dark. And maybe the legs are a little on the dark side. I don't want them to just unnecessarily stand out in the tone of my painting. Let's go back into our jug and add not too much, but a little bit more green there. Also have the shadow. It's very strong in my example, and this kind of just falls off the paper here, so I'll just let that sort of come around. There. And I do want to just kind of give an indication of some variance because we've got these words. Now let's work on our little planter here. I'll just tap in a little bit more color. Bucket. And I think I'm going to add just a tad of black. It's a little different than I did it before, just to kind of give it some definition. Now, I've got these little examples out here because it's got that similar colorway, and this is from my beloved grandmother's desk over here, this little green glass. It's fun. And just tapping in some of this kind of celadon green in a few places, and then under here we'll do darker green or whatever you want. These could be pink. But you can see I've just kind of dabbled some paint in here to start, and then I can start making it make more realistic sense. I can take some darker green. Almost looks the same, so I've got it on my brush. And now I'm going to tap in this kind of darker green here. And now in this white space, I'm just kind of almost making some make-believe leaves. I've got this darker green. I'm just going to tap in at the bottom of these flowers and brush a little bit near some of the stems to kind of give impression of the stems and the lines. I'm moving around so that I don't overwork one area and then end up with an imbalanced picture with heavier on one side and less on another. We get kind of bored and we move on and we don't do them kind of more symmetrical. I'm going to add a little bit of gray. Oh, wow, that was a lot of gray to this as it's kind of a little messy in here. Not really distinct on the petals, and now I've just got water in there and just kind of spreading that out and around, and we'll come back later, so I've kind of need to define some of those leaves. Let's get our bottle here. I filled that in more than I did in my original, but it's okay. Who loves sea glass? It's so pretty. So it comes from broken vessels like these, washed over time. My grandmother lived like 3 houses off of Lake Erie, and we used to find all kinds of cool sea glass there, actually. People dumping bottles and then just wash up. Okay, and now for the top of this little cabinet, I'm going to just make up this light brown. As long as that's dry, you're good to go. And I think that will be nice. I've kind of overworked this area, or about to overwork this area down here. So I'm going to come in. This is a little more brown than my other examples, but they can all look different. And I'm going to pop a little green in there. Really don't want that to stand out as much as it is. So just don't want anything when your eye looks at it to see something kind of super dark. All right, so now I'm going to go over to this cutting board that's leaning against this wall. I'll just kind of come in and fill this in. I'm going around these little flowers here in this basket in front. Let's go up here and do this little cabinet that's hanging on the wall. This is how the photograph was, so I just emulated that because I liked the idea of this cool looking cabinet. And fill that in. You could make it all wood. This also has some glass, so we're using some of this green-ish glass. And it just has this little shadow. And that'll be underneath a frame, so it doesn't need to be like finished out. But it's up to you. And we'll take that same color and go over here and kind of emulate that shadow. From these two items. And there will be a little bit, maybe with some of these stems. It's very far away from the wall, so it's not really gonna throw quite that shadow, but I'll give a little dimension there. And we've got this one down here. This will be more down, and I'll get something dark in the middle there. So let's go ahead and get a brownish gray on the bottom for your floor. The basket. And you can pick whatever wood color you'd like. Like a little bit darker than a white oak. We'll let that kind of set up, and then we'll do the actual floor. So let's go back in here, and I love how that's looking with the watercolor, the way that it dried in there. It's very pretty. The little details. And I'm just going to accentuate some of these flowers. And if you don't want the white of the paper, you can clear off your brush, and while that's already dry, you can just kind of run your brush over that area and just kind of blend it a little bit. And now I'm going to go across my table here. Get the corner. Keep going over and over and over that. This thing is worn out. And now I'll get the floor. And we'll come back and finish that basket in a minute. So our shadow's already set up, so it'll stay and remain there. I'm just going around it. And then I can take my clear brush and just kind of go over those lines. Unless you want your baseboards to be white, then of course you would just leave those. And now I'm going to add a little bit more green across some of these areas. Grab that edge. All right, for this little bunch of flowers, they're a bright green. Putting that in a couple of stems here. Whoop. My finger in the paint there. And we'll let that dry for just a second. And now I'm going to take my clear brush and just kind of go over some of that white here so it still looks light but not fully painted in. You can kind of come in and start to define some of these edges a little bit. Not necessarily for exactly a shadow, but just sort of accentuating some of those lines that were drawn. And you can do it for shadow as well. If you're using black, just be careful because it can come out very strong, of course. I'm not going to go around every single line. I'm just pulling a few just to kind of make it less flat. That's kind of strong at the top, so I'll just kind of go over that a little bit. Make that green kind of stand out. We're just having those issues. I think this is coming together nicely, so you can decide how much detail you'd like in this drawing if you've got it, or in any of your drawings. You just kind of make sure to add in that contrast, which is sort of scary sometimes when you're worried that you might mess your drawing up. But if you don't try a few things, you're never going to advance your skill. So now we'll go and do the green in this basket is sort of just a bunch of whatever, and we've got all these little spaces. I'm just popping. It's a white basket, so if you were doing this in a color like a brown or something like that, it would be almost near impossible. So we're all stuck with white, and let me get a little bit of darker green to pop in here. Get a little bit of shade. Don't want it to look too muddy. And then we can go over our cutting board a little bit and kind of blend in some of those areas with a clear brush. I think I've got the wall over here has a shadow, so we'll go ahead and put that underneath the glass shadow there. And if you want to paint the rest of your wall like I did here, you can do that with just a thin layer of water and just add a little bit of your wall color into it. So we'll just leave this like it is because I think this looks great to pop into a frame and it's so fun to create. So tag me on Instagram and I can take a look at what you've done and hopefully reshare and repost what you've worked on.